Welcome back to Oneself. My name is Stephen Maher. With me today, with me always, is Adam Bartiman. Adam, thank you so much for joining me today, my friend.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me.
Anytime, bro. Once a week. You got me, bro. Folks, today, what are we talking about? We're talking about kind of a thing that might bring up some feelings. We're gonna try to go into this conversation gently and with compassion, but it's about victimhood, right? And accountability, and also just the things we feel when we hear something that we might not necessarily like. And that also comes into mind when we villainize someone we maybe liked in the past, and then they come out with a message or something that maybe you identified with in the past, but then they say something in the present that you don't necessarily like. Famous examples, right, come to mind of any artist that you like, and then they have some sort of scandal, right, or some sort of something. It's like, can you separate the art from the artist? Because if the art made you feel something, that doesn't mean the art didn't have merit, right? Like it left an impact on you, but you can separate the art from the artist, right? And so it's like you don't have to be, worshiping the artist anymore, but you can still identify with what the art made you feel. And, when it comes to accountability, y'all, especially, I have, examples in my life that I've seen, myself included, where for all intents and purposes, I see people that have on paper a pretty solid life. But anytime something goes wrong or anytime there's an inconvenience in their life, it's never their fault, right? It's always someone else. It's always this reason or the other, that they're not where they're supposed to be or they're not where they want to be, right? But it takes sometimes, again, accountability to be like, okay, I'm in control of myself, my own actions, and I'm responsible for me, right? And it's not on the rest of the world to curtail to my hopes, wants, and wishes, right? And again, that's not what a lot of people want to hear. The ego gets in the way, feelings get hurt, all that sort of stuff um, clouds judgment, I would say. But Adam, we're gonna dive into it, bro. I covered a couple points there, man, and I would love to hear your opening thoughts and dive into what feels good, bro.
Yeah, I mean, I guess what comes to mind immediately is the cult of personality, that we're so addicted to, and the way that we jump into the idea of hierarchy and how our minds want to so quickly look at things in a stratified manner because we're so used to this stratified society, which is as a result of the illusion of separation, right? Not understanding that we're all one. So people can get pretty easily caught up. For example, putting someone that they like on a pedestal. And the classic advice is if you put someone on a pedestal, they've only got one place to go, which is to fall off of it. So recognizing that, yeah, like putting someone on a pedestal is essentially the same thing as demonizing them because it's just two ends of the same spectrum. If you're putting them above, then at some point you're gonna have to put them below in order to balance that because you've created this attachment that you've pushed this energy outside of yourself, and that is all too common in our world. And like you said, with separating the art from the artist, when we are hearing something, using the example of when we're hearing something that we like, like a message, separate that message if you can from, or, the advice being separate that message if you can from the person delivering it. So separating the message from the messenger, because ultimately the message is the only thing that matters. It's not the personality that's delivering it. So yeah, that's where I'd start.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it's how many countless rock stars are were doing sketchy shit, right, at some point in their lives. You know what I mean? Whether it's with underage women or drugs or whatever, right? Whatever the case is, but it's like, can that music still hold importance in my heart? Or like, can the message of the music still hold importance? It's like, absolutely, right? And some people like, oh, like you should never listen to that music or support that music or whatever
Mm,
again. And it's like, well, yeah, like, but there were many more people involved in making that music than maybe just like the singer or, you know what
yeah.
I mean? Or, and so it's like, it's tricky. It's tricky because it's like, your dollars are your votes, right? Like your ears and where you spend your attention
Yeah.
is, that's a vote in society where it's like I lend credibility, credence to this thing, right? But again, when it comes to the feelings that we generate within ourselves and people like, you shouldn't do this and you shouldn't do that. It's what we said about the last episode, right? Like judge not. It's like look internal before you point the finger at anybody else, and we're
Yeah.
so quick to, feel victimized by actions outside of ourselves, for people we've never even met.
Yeah.
And we're so quick to condemn others and come down on others. And here's my biggest bone to pick with all of this. It's like, that energy and passion, I'm here for it. But it's like, how about you direct it at like a politician or a CEO or someone who like actually is impacting your life, and being detrimental to your life. Like you're attacking, maybe an artist or, maybe a celebrity or whoever. It's like, okay, like fair, like you might have a point, but on a list of priorities, is that person really, going to make or break your life? Go take that to your
Yeah.
local, politician, to your mayor, like to the people that are actually implementing policies in your life that are affecting you, you know?
Yeah.
So that's like my biggest bone to pick, man. It's just that it's like this first world bullshit as far as I can tell, right? It's like where are the real problems? What are our priorities truly, right?
Yeah.
And to get clear about them.
Yeah, and that's an important one, and yeah, you brought up a lot of points there. It's interesting because if we're in the situation where we understand that we have a direct impact on that situation. So, for example, like, I'm attending a group, say like a meditation group that is led by a guy who seems like a pretty good guy, and and then I find out later that this guy has been abusing women. So in that case, yeah, I'm not going to that meditation circle anymore. I'm not giving any donations because, as you say, voting with your dollars, every dollar I can make the argument that every dollar I would have given to that person would be a dollar going towards supporting the abuse of people. And then when it's something from the past, like you said, hearing a musician from like a rock star from the 70s was dated an underage woman, as many celebrities have, also like still
Yeah.
contemporary, situation here. A lot of that going on. Or, hearing like Pablo Picasso was engaged in some questionable behavior. Okay, so now am I never going to look at that art again? And it's like I don't think we're here to say which one is right or wrong. We're just here to, like, I mean, in my opinion, we're here to just discuss, like, understanding that what we as a society have judged as right and wrong over time has changed. And therefore, if you're, you've got a favorite artist or whatever public figure who is now doing some lovely work, and maybe they're a bit older, and you find out that 40 years ago they were engaged in something that is now considered questionable, is now considered not acceptable, do you then go and cancel them? So talking, for example, like we've discussed comedians before. Like, a good example that comes to mind would be Eddie Murphy and some of his stand-up acts from the 80s, which were like pretty homophobic and would not fly today. So some pretty sexist and homophobic things said. And many people have tried to cancel comedians for what they're pointing out about society because they're choosing to be victims based on what that person has said. And am I here to say that that's right or wrong? No. Am I here to say that the way people choose to take it is wrong or right? Also, no. Just understand that these things are not absolute, as we choose to define ourselves both individually and collectively, that's an evolution. It changes over time and space, right? Again, different parts of the world, different things are acceptable. Public displays of affection while traveling through Asia with your partner, most places not okay. However, in Europe, totally okay. And just understanding one isn't right, the other is wrong, and that we just have to be able to hold all of that rather than getting pulled into these polarizing mindsets, which then cause us to miss what's going on. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, man. No, we get attached, right? Like we get attached to certain things and, we feel some type of way about them. Right. And again, like, the cultural differences or societal differences or, different
Hmm.
opinions that we have. And it's like, well, we've made this point before, but it's like bringing in additional suffering onto ourselves. because of these attachments, right? To these things that, again, it's like, is that a priority? You know,
Yeah.
like, no, like it's not a fundamental aspect of what humans need to survive, you know, especially in this. And again, like you said, that
Yeah.
is changing, right? So it's like, you know, as things get, you know, people consider the internet to be a right now, or you know, access to healthcare, right? They consider to be a right. Or, you know, 200 years ago or 100 years ago, like, no way, like those things,
Hmm.
neither of those things existed, right? So it's, again, these things are changing as we're moving forward through time. And because of that, you know, it's like keeping an open mind when it comes to everything is tough. It's tricky. I'm not
Yeah.
saying it's easy, but to get bogged down by these conversations that, again, maybe are put there by design, right? To divide people
Yeah.
and, you know, to create division. It's like, you know, I think that's part of it too, right? Where it's like these things are placed here, these things that do not matter. I mean, I've seen it in politics time and time again, bro. And it's like, I don't want to dive into politics right now, but it's, you know, again, I think to distract from the real issues, they throw in some, you know, throw in something to just
Some
stir the
celebrity
pot.
scandal. Yeah.
Yeah, something, anything, right? Just to stir the
Yeah.
pot and, you know, distract people and, you know, get away from, if people are getting close to, like, here's an example, right? After the 2008 housing crisis in America, there was like the walk on Wall Street or whatever, you know, what was it? I
Mm.
forget what it was. I don't know. There's like, you know, people protesting against Wall Street, which was like, yeah, they were hitting it on the nose. Like that was the people, like, by and large, that were responsible for that. But then, you know, they diluted the movement and, you know, again, like it just, you know, kind of devolved into this other thing. But I think that was on purpose. Like I think though, like it was like the distractions were thrown in on purpose because it's like people were getting too close, right? To like who was actually
Yeah.
responsible. And I mean, as far as I can tell, right? That's just my only perspective, man. But yeah, brother, I just
Yeah.
think you know,
Yeah, and it all comes down to like, yeah, again, distraction. Again, why is everyone so fired up about what this, movie star or sports figure did when there's really something else going on that's much more worthy of our collective attention? I think most people would agree if they were aware of it, kind of thing. But we got a society that's conditioned into believing that the government is your friend, and to question that is too out there, and would rather just focus on the daily newspaper and whatever's been funneled in for their enjoyment and for their consideration, which is, all carefully tailored. I think is very obvious at this point. And then at the same time, it's like we have to hold the reality that all of this can be looked at from a different perspective. That sure, we should hold everyone accountable, right? If a musician did engage in some really questionable behavior, yeah, we absolutely should consider that and how it reflects on us individually and collectively. How do we want to make a different choice moving forward? Do we want to collectively say that it's okay for a rock star to engage in some questionable sexual behavior? Like, we can make these arguments. We can look from these different perspectives at all of it. And, in everyone's opinion, again, because we're not sitting here saying that we can see every perspective. If anyone is saying that and saying that they are absolutely right, again, that's a good indication to move in the other direction. Get away from that person,
right,
because we got to be able to hold the understanding that there is a polarity, and that we're not seeing all of it. If we're moving through, if we're looking through our own attachments, which we are, if we're sitting here in bodies, we're still moving through our own karma. If we're attached to these physical bodies, so we are definitely going to have some blind spots, and we gotta be able to hold that reality. So I think it comes down to, at least through my personal experience, understanding what brings me peace and what allows me to see the most clearly, is to, whenever I see myself getting activated or attached to a certain story or idea, is just to take a deep breath and step back and just remember, I'm probably not seeing all of it. Let's give this some space. Let's try and look at this from every direction as much as possible, in order to invite more clarity before speaking up, before taking action. But then at the same time, also getting to that point where we make that decision to take that action. If that makes
yeah.
sense. Does that make sense?
To step, it's like, I think that too, dude, where it's like people often act too quick, or it's like the gut reaction, that immediately gets them, fired up, or, leaving a comment, or, posting, or whatever, right? Some sort of thing, because everyone's got an opinion today. When life is relatively easy compared to the vast majority of the world, right? And if you've traveled, you know this, right? When you travel to different parts of the world, you understand that there are billions in poverty. You understand that life is really hard for a lot of people. And but I would also make the point that, like, they're also rich in other ways, that, places that I think Adam and I are from are not rich in community, rich in family,
Mm.
rich in culture, rich in other ways, right? But when it comes to, like, maybe the necessities of survival, they're lacking. And so when you have access to all this, I was talking to someone this the other day, like the miracle of a refrigerator. Like, just think of that, like like for a machine, and like the ability to preserve your food for a couple of days. Like, that is a miracle. So is electricity, right? Consistent electricity and a consistent electric grid. Those are all miracles, right? And a lot of things go into that. And so when we dial in on these problems that are what I would say to be, like, a lot of them are superficial, I think it is causing a massive detriment on the collective, because there's so many real things that need to be addressed across the globe. And like, and if you look, you'll find them. Like, there's some really beautiful work of people, addressing environmental concerns when it comes to, like, pollution, or, around the globe, or, different ways, more sustainable ways for energy, or any of that stuff, right? And so it's just like eye on the ball of, like, what we're focusing on, what we choose to really, like, put our energy into. Yeah, that's I guess that's what I'm trying to say, brother.
Yeah, and it's like that energy can be put into places that just doesn't make any sense when those survival problems have left, are not
Yeah.
present anymore. Yeah, so we're still stuck in survival mode thinking, but we don't have those same problems. And then we pair that with a disconnect with ourselves and community and family. And now people are just lost and confused, and their nervous system is looking for something to attach to justify how they're feeling, which is still stuck in survival mode, even though, living in the West with all of the necessities and far more met, then what are we attaching to? We're getting upset about things that could easily be argued don't really matter. And then, again, also could be argued that they do matter, and that's part of our evolution. And so it's all,
Multiple
again,
truths.
it's all
Yeah, multiple
it's all
truths.
gravy. Yeah, it's all there's paradox, there's dichotomy, there's paradox. It's okay. But just being aware of it. And that's what we're doing here. We're just talking about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, understanding that that's kind of where it's kind of like idle hands are the devil's playground. It's like when
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
and why we're generally more happy when we're given a task. It's like I always said that about myself. I'm like a golden retriever. Like give me something to do and I'm happy. Like and I think a lot of people, and specifically men, can be like that. Like let me display how useful I am to other people. Like give me a job, and then I'm content. It's like when I'm sitting around with nothing to do, and I haven't been raised in a society that values an inner connection, and we haven't taught our young ones how to sit in meditation and tap into the wellspring of infinite consciousness and bliss that resides within us. It's easy to get bored and to get restless and to find something to be annoyed by.
Yeah. Yeah, when most things are taken care of, it's like you're not spending all day, collecting water, or searching for food, or, starting a fire to cook the food, or, all those household chores that I've seen across the globe, again, in travels, that we take for granted, that you can just turn on a stove that has propane in it, or it's an electric stove, or that, like, all those things that save us so much time. And I've noticed this too, man, because, like, where I am currently is, like, it's really inconvenient in a lot of ways, right? To do things, right? To go shopping, or, to get food, or to get groceries. And it's like,
Mhm.
you know, when those things are a chore, like, it's not like I can just hop in a car and go to a grocery store like I can in the West. It's a bit of a journey, right? Like, I'm walking, I can't get that much, because it's like it's only what I can carry,
Yeah.
and so it's like, what does that mean? I have to make more trips, and so it's like that inconvenience occupies more of your time, and you're not as fixated on the things that upset you, because it's like the inconvenience I think is makes you also more present, all right, as
Yes.
well, and it's and so, yeah, the inconvenience brings you into the present, where it's like when we have so much convenience via television, via, the cell phones, via, all the other things, yeah, man, I think it's really, and I'm saying this from experience, y'all. It's like, like, 'cause it's the perspective of both. It really just, starts to mess with me, and, like, starts to mess with my mind of just occupying things or putting my time and attention into things where I'm like, I know that doesn't serve me.
Yeah. And it's an interesting I was just thinking about this the other day, and like, maybe it's a little bit of a different direction for the conversation, but we can bring it back to the accountability and victimhood thing. Cause thinking about that, about how well, first of all, for example, when you're accustomed to all that convenience, like we are, in the West, every product that comes out is like save some time. Oh, this food that you used to have to prepare yourself now like comes pre-made and frozen, whatever it is, stuff like that. When we get away from that, and now, in my experience, going to live for short periods of time, even though it's only a little bit, in more rural places and different countries, and having to get back to basics for making food, doing chores, even doing laundry, it becomes a much more involved task. And it's funny, I've noticed in myself, coming from that Western mindset of trying to rush through everything, all of a sudden to now slowing down and becoming super present and involved in every task, it brings a ton of happiness. It brings so much connection. It results in having a great sleep at night, waking up refreshed, excited to engage in simple tasks. And maybe this is the pendulum swing of like going too far into like disconnection in modern culture, to then wanting to come back to something simple, like living a very simple life. Now, the idea of like living off grid and growing my own food sounds like really, really appealing. Not from this like fear based conspiracy theory place of like needing to do that because an energy grid's going to go down, but like actually from a place of love because it actually feels so good, which I think is the best way to go about any of these things. So seeing that results from our, I mean, at least in myself, seeing that resulted from a life in which I was trying to avoid boredom and get through all of the simple tasks, understanding that it was like, I feel like I was programmed by my society to never be inconvenienced. It's like any inconvenience you want to avoid that. Here's a new product to help bring more convenience
Yeah.
into your life. And like so you can get on to the next thing. And it's like, okay, well, what is the next thing? What am I always rushing forward to? I'm like, what is that? Why am I rushing through my day? Because when I go to this place where it's taking a couple hours just to prepare one meal, or it's taking a couple hours and a lot of manual labor to wash some clothes, why am I feeling so happy when I'm doing that? When I'm in the present moment? And it's like, well, because the present moment, whatever it is you're doing, no matter how unpleasant that task seems to you, or has been presented to you as being unpleasant, no matter what it is, that's life. Whatever it is you're doing in the moment is the present moment. That's the only thing that exists. Why are we always trying, again, in my own experience, why was I always trying to rush to get to the next thing? What is that mindset? Where does that come from? Because I'm like, I, basically, I came to the I came to the conclusion for myself. The truth that I saw was like, I think that's a societal program. I think that is something that comes in when we are on this 9 to 5, 8 hour workday thinking, where you're at work doing something you don't enjoy, coming home and only having a few hours to eat and interact with family before you got to get to bed because you got to get up and do the work thing again. In that framework, yeah, maybe some conveniences would be good because I only got a couple hours to get all my stuff done before I got to go to bed and get up and do it all again. And whereas, pre-industrial society, people had a lot more time in the day. If they're growing their own food, they're working a few hours a day, and then they're doing it also in community, engaged with family and all this. So like all of those needs are being met. But when we're in this sort of industrialized and like, post-industrialized society, we are, or more, sorry, more advanced industrialized society. I don't know, however it was popularly termed now, but we are so disconnected from ourselves, from family and community. This having this mindset programmed in to be constantly rushing to the next thing is, I think, is supportive and is supportive of that type of system, right? In which we're just giving our energy away. And to loop it back to the sort of victimhood thing too, I think for whatever negative feelings are coming up because of that disconnection, it's also going to be beneficial to that system or whoever's controlling it to have us distracted as well and have us kind of at each other's throats over perceived perhaps inequality. Not to say that inequality doesn't exist, but also inequalities that are made up with the multiple layers of victimhood that we've all sort of been adopting the last few years. Like, I think it all kind of comes together. I think it all makes sense. This discomfort, which it originates from that disconnection from within, from ourselves. Really like that. Is that too much of a tangent?
No, man.
Hmm.
I appreciate you looping it back too, you know, like I really think that, yeah, like people are just by and large, like just lost, man. Like we're all lost, you know what I mean? Like, you know, that's like looking for love in all the wrong places, you know,
Yeah.
it's just like, you know, and I think that's what a lot of people are looking for too. It's like literally that. It's just like we're looking for approval, love, respect, admiration. And I think that it's just people are going about it in a way that is counterintuitive, right? Like it's like, yeah, historically, it's like we'd want all those things from the communities that we reside in to be
Hmm.
useful, right? To be of service. You know, that you were touching upon that, like being of service to the people. And like, yeah, like, you know, I feel that as well. But, you know, we think we'll get all that stuff from, you know, being, you know, calling out each other and, you know, putting each other down and, you know, bashing each other, and it's just like it's not the way. If anything, you know, it's hippie, it's cheesy, it's cliche, whatever, but it's like, you know, uplifting, supporting, you know, being of service,
Yeah.
you know, all those things to friends, family, community. And again, I'm not saying be naive, like don't like dole your time and energy and efforts to like people that aren't going to have your back as well or reciprocate as well, you know, in times of community or in times of need. It's like, you know, use your discernment. You know, we touch upon that, you know
Yeah.
who to give your time to, and, you know, trust your heart, right? You know, trust your heart and your gut feeling, your instincts, I guess, is all I can say to the best of your ability
Yeah.
in terms of that stuff.
Yeah, and also like just making sure that it's coming from a good place. Essentially, if you are giving from a full cup, then I mean discernment in terms of safety and everything for sure, but it doesn't even need, I mean, in my opinion, it doesn't even need to be discerned whether this person is going to reciprocate, because if we're looking at it from that perspective, because ultimately if we're giving to one, we're giving to everyone, we're giving to ourselves. So as long as like, so it's again, we're a lot of us are programmed into, because of this lack mindset culture and this disconnection from ourselves, this feeling that we don't have enough, so that if we are giving something, we need to know that there's going to be a return. This is sort of like a lot of human interaction. And this is because, again, coming from a disconnected culture where we have not been conditioned to, taught how to find that within ourselves, because our parents themselves were rushing to the next thing because they were trying to get to bed to be able to get up for work, to go work for the man. And in that case, so we're not taught how to find that within ourselves. But if we were coming from a more slow paced setting where we've grown up being taught how to love ourselves unconditionally and seen it displayed through family and immediate community and, supportive community, then we wouldn't have to be so worried about who we're going to give to, how we're going to be of service. We would just know that if we have the energy, we would know when we have love and energy to share, because we're giving it from that full place. So it always loops back to like being connected with ourselves and knowing when we have enough. Because if I know that I have enough, and I understand through that knowing that exists within me, I understand the connection of everything, that if I'm giving to a stranger, if I'm helping out a stranger that I'm never going to see again in that physical body, that doesn't matter. That's okay, because everything
Yeah,
is connected. But
yeah,
that awareness, that knowing in which we can actually tap into that greater reciprocal flow only comes through the deeper connection with oneself, because that, that knowing has to be there. Otherwise, the ego mind is coming in and going like, well, this person, I might never see them again. How are they going to be able to, help me mend my fence after I help them, nail up some boards or whatever.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool. It always, from my perspective, it always loops back to oneness and like
Yeah,
getting
no,
in.
the
Yeah.
quote that comes to mind is, planting seeds of trees that you never, enjoy the shade of, or, I'm paraphrasing
Mm,
that, but I forget the exact wording, but it's like, yeah, sometimes you're gonna do things and you might not necessarily benefit from them. I guess what I was coming from was that it's just like, more of a place of safety,
safety for sure.
safety, and just, not putting yourself in environments or things that'll harm or hurt you.
Yeah.
But absolutely, again, in discernment, right? It's like, absolutely, if you meet a stranger and, I always try to, help that. If I see someone or, in a
Amidst.
store or whatever, and they need a hand getting something from a high shelf, you're tall too, dude. It's like I'll
Yeah.
just go and grab it, throw it in their
Yeah.
cart. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
quick thanks, and yeah, of course, and keep it moving, right? It's like I'm never gonna
Yeah.
see that person again.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so it's like, yeah, that type of stuff. It's like, of course, to give yourself to those moments and to be of service. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, it's important because if we're not seeing that greater collective, that whole human family, and more than that, man, it's more than just the human family, but just to keep it for this perspective or for this conversation, like not
Yeah.
understanding that it's like the entire human family, then we're staying in that sort of like tribalism mindset, which is, just very egotistical. Again, survival mindset, which is like the survival mindset is what's making people think they got to focus on convenience and rushing toward the next thing, and then end up in this situation where like what I observe in North America is like everyone's just rushing forward, and it's like, what are you rushing to? Like everyone's rushing toward an end that they don't even understand. Like why are you powering through university? Like, oh, to get the job, to get like so I can get the partner and have the kids, and you're like, yeah, but why? Like, are you focusing on being a good person? Like, otherwise, you're just gonna pass on the same trauma to your kids, and they're just gonna be rushing through life to a deadline, rushing to deadlines that don't exist, and like this whole kind of nonstop kind of hamster wheel thing. But yeah, when we're coming from a lack mindset, that's where it goes. As far as I can see, like in my experience, it always goes to that. And it's like it's this survival thing. It's like, how is this gonna immediately benefit me? How am I gonna immediately get a return? I remember meeting this person, was like a friend of a friend many, many years ago, and we were talking about donating blood, and they were from another country. And this person was like, "Well, I'm not gonna," so I was in Canada. They're like, "Well, I'm not gonna donate blood in Canada because, like, I'm not like if I'm gonna donate blood, I'm gonna donate it at home, like back in my country, because like I want to help my people." And I remember being like, "What?" That doesn't make like I understand the thinking because it's true, like tribalism, very like fear-based separation. But I'm like,
Yeah.
humans are humans. If somebody needs help, then you're like, what's the difference? Like, but anyway, I thought that was a remarkable. I mean, for me, that is a remarkable anecdote from my life. That was like many years ago, and I just thought, man, that doesn't make any sense. But I can see, obviously, I can see why that person's thinking that. It's not hard to figure that out, but also it's um, fascinating that they, at that time weren't seeing more than it, but maybe they are now.
Yeah, man. Yeah. No, it's you know, and you'll get more blood. Yeah, like your body will generate more blood too.
Exactly.
It's not like you're not gonna get it back,
Yeah, yeah,
But something
exactly.
I've observed too, brother, is especially when it comes to music playing in the States, people's attention spans are like shot, bro. Like it's like,
Mm,
and where I am currently playing piano, singing for 3 hours, and like people will stay the entire time. For three
wow.
hours, bro. Like, that's, like it's unheard of back home, it just
Yeah,
is, like, people maybe 20 minutes, maybe a half hour before they're like, "Alright, like, where's the next thing? Where's the next bar? Like, where are we going to the next," And,
yeah,
it's just an interesting thing I've observed where people are so much more present and willing to, like, sit and chill and relax and, again, just be in the moment and enjoy music,
yeah,
and it's beautiful, brother, like, it's a beautiful, like, gift of attention, like, I didn't even realize, like, I was, like, um that was something that was lacking, in the States, right? Obviously, if you're like a big successful act, like people are gonna come and see you and, and stay the whole time. But, if I'm just,
They'd probably
playing
be
in
on their
that,
phones still though.
you know Yeah, yeah, they will, bro. Like, go to even
Yeah.
any of the big people, right? Especially during the hits, right? Like that's when everyone gets the phones out when they
Yes.
play the hits, right? Or like when it's like one of the hit songs. It's like, this is the hit song. Like, don't you want to be like present for the hit?
Yeah.
I don't know, bro. I don't know. Again, it's a distortion from my point of
Yeah.
view. But
But it's like
yeah,
where it's like, why is that? Why are they feeling so like they need the again, the next dopamine hit of going to the next piano bar, of getting the next drink, of going like it's like, okay, we've been here for 20 minutes. I need a cheeseburger. Like, why is that? It's like, well, perhaps it's because they have been, like our society, we've been so conditioned into really being very narcissistic and feeling that we need so much stimulation. And where does that come from? It's like from this like victimhood, from having taken a bunch of stuff way too seriously, maybe from having been absorbing this content throughout the day of horrible horrible information, and allowing it to impact our nervous systems to the point that we think we need to get all these dopamine hits from all these different things, and have and result in this incredibly short attention span. That's just a very theoretical, one way of looking at it. But I mean, potentially, it's just so disarrayed, so disillusioned in many ways. It's just it's an interesting situation. But you can see the differences again traveling, the remarkable differences between North America, for our example, and these other places, like I've seen places where people have, materially speaking, far, far less, but seem to me at least to be much happier because they're existing within tight family, like a tight family unit, as well as a really supportive community, and having all of the basic needs met in a lot of cases, just with a lot less extravagance than perhaps we're conditioned to have in North America. And the line I always loved from the book, or the movie Fight Club, was everyone growing up believing that they're supposed to be rock stars or movie stars when they grow up, and getting there and then realizing that they're not, and being pissed off. And again, it's like this, expectations versus reality, and then being, so you're pissed off. Somebody's pissed off that they're not famous, and it's like, okay, so you're a victim. You're making yourself a victim because you're living like just a regular life. Again, North America, not everyone, but in large part, all those survival needs met, we've been mentioning. All of those needs are met. Everything's good, and yet we're still stuck feeling like victims. Perhaps because we're still looking through the eyes of somebody who's trying to survive, because we haven't evolved in that way, over the last few hundred years, perhaps. And we're still looking at things like that. But it's just like, so when are we going to stop this cycle? When are we going to like drop into our hearts and just recognize that we can find that happiness within, because there's no path to happiness. Happiness is the path, as the Buddha said.
right, man. And I do acknowledge that, things are getting harder, right? Like where we're from. And, prices are going up and,
Hmm.
I'm not saying that things aren't hard, for in that like there's, everyone has problems. And it's like I'm not saying that life is easy for anybody, no matter where you are, but I am saying that there are pros and cons to different parts of the globe, right? And then to different cultures and to different ways of living and different experiences,
Yes.
and
Yeah. Just different
so,
experiences.
yeah, just different experiences, man. Just that my grandmother would say, "Just different," right? You know what I mean? Anytime there's like, something coming along that, again, is just different, right? Different culture,
Yes.
different perspective, different way of life, different religion, different, whatever it is, right? Just
Yeah.
different. Still human,
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, man.
But no, I think it's, looping it back to, like, the accountability and to the victimhood. I do wanna say that, in the cosmic lottery of wherever you're born or, whatever set of cards you're dealt at in coming into your life, right? It's just, yeah, having gratitude for all of it, right? And for the things that we do have. The
Yeah.
gratitude for me was huge, man, just to, like, really just be, like, grateful because, again, it's like the victim mentality is, like, what I don't have, what is attacking me, like what I don't have control over,
Mhm.
and like the gratitude, yeah, like we said, like shifts the perspective. It's like, no, what I do have, the opportunities I do have, what I do have control over, which is myself, my mind to a certain extent, not necessarily my thoughts, but it's like I can choose to, lend credence to those thoughts or, give
Yeah.
again
Which
votes to
ones?
those thoughts or those yeah,
Yeah.
which ones I believe, I embody and
Pay
which
attention
ones
to.
I pay attention
Yeah.
to. Exactly, brother. And, change the narrative within my
Yeah.
own mind. And yeah, man. So it's just like, an antidote, right, to these things, an antidote to those things is just what we're grateful for, and that's hard. That's hard to shift that perspective, especially if you're in survival mode, especially if, you're going through it, depression, whatever it is, a grief, right? Grief, but it's like, focusing on the gratitude of what we got because helped me a lot, just in navigating my
Yeah.
life.
Absolutely. Everything that's coming up is, the perfect set of conditions. Whatever our conditions are the perfect conditions for our evolution. Wherever you're born, whatever you're born into, and again, this gets people fired up about, when we're talking about inequality. But as far as I can see, the understanding of karma is that whatever our conditions are perfect. They've been perfectly selected for what our soul is trying to experience at that time in order to evolve, in order to deepen the remembering of our awareness. And finding gratitude, as you said, is like the quickest way to dissolve of the attachment that is creating the conditions that perhaps we wouldn't choose for ourselves consciously anymore. So finding the gratitude and accepting it is the quickest way through it, which is beautiful in its simplicity and sometimes challenging in practice in applying it.
Yeah.
But as far as I can see, still nevertheless the truth.
Yeah, man. Well, sir, I think that's probably a good place to cap this episode 29, brother. Holy goodness. That's pretty good. It's pretty good, bro. Any closing thoughts for episode 29 on yeah, gratitude, just accountability, any of that stuff.
Yeah, I guess with like accountability and gratitude, it's just, we can continue being angry at any system, any group of people, any individual that has oppressed us. We can continue being angry as long as we want to, and there's nothing wrong with that. But just understand if you really want to affect change, we have to take a responsibility to understand that we had a part in it, no matter what it was, even if it's happened to us as children. It's part of our karmic blueprint, and owning it is going to be the quickest way through it. Can continue trying to shift the blame, pass the buck, but we'll play that game until we realize it just sends us in loops. So that's all I would say. It's just it arrives at accountability eventually. So why not just skip a couple steps and just get right there?
Yeah. Yeah. Avoid the hard way if you can.
Yeah,
As I guess is what we're trying to, guide
yeah,
guide anyone towards,
sure.
Folks, if you like
Ourselves.
what you heard, ourselves too, yeah,
Hmm.
ourselves too, man. But, if you like what you heard, please support us in any of the ways that are free, commenting, liking, subscribing, sharing it with friends, family. We really appreciate all that, and, yeah, we'll catch you next time on Oneself. Thank you so much.
Thank you.